Imagine not being able to read the paper because your hands were shaking. Imagine not being able to read newsprint as your world faded to black. The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. With your host, Lee Martin, and co-host, Florence Myers-McSwine.
I want to welcome you to the National Federation of the Blind Newsline show. And it is a show that does a lot of community awareness regarding NFB Newsline service, regarding blindness, and a lot about community affairs. So Florence, how are you doing today?
Lee, I'm doing well today.
I know it's been a very busy month for us as we completed the National Federation of the Blind convention in Las Vegas this month, last month. And we've had such a busy period, and it's been a great time for NFB Newsline with new publications and also new subscribers all the time.
Well, Lee, we always like to get those comments from our subscribers. I always seem to get positive comments. They're really enjoying it.
Yeah, and that's the one thing about Newsline. It is a free audio information service, and it's free to any citizens that have print challenges, those that are blind, those that have certain forms of dyslexia, even those that are deaf-blind. To us, it means the world, but to those that have sight, it's somewhat frivolous to them. But once again, it is a free service, and if you know of anyone that is coping with sight loss or vision, please get them the numbers that come across the screen and get in touch with us. And just stay tuned and listen to the comments. We have some great comments that come through, so take care, and we'll see you right after break.
I love to read. I've always loved to read. Reading takes me places I'm not able to go by air, bus, or car. I plan on reading every newspaper Newsline has.
No more did I have to wonder about the rest of the story when disaster struck. I could open the local paper for that town and find out. And when I discovered that NFB Newsline could be a powerful tool for TV watching, listing all my favorite channels and what was on when, I was most definitely hooked.
If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I am a CFP practitioner, and I happen to be blind. I rely on NFB Newsline to keep me current with Wall Street Journal and the Financial Times.
Hoosiers can hear Indiana magazines, circulars, national magazines, and information from across the globe. Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org. If you or someone you know is visually impaired or print challenged, the National Federation of the Blind has a resource you need.
I use NFB Newsline when reading Hammond Northwest Times.
Using NFB Newsline, I read the Christian Science magazine.
Dad, you read Jerusalem Post too.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Live the life you want. Read NFB Newsline.
It's free.
Welcome back to this week's National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show. And we do have a special guest for you today. We have Miss Bonnie Bomer from Indiana Disability Rights. And Miss Bomer, welcome to our show today.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. I just want to jump right in. I first want to find out your title with disability rights. You're a disability rights advocate?
Yes, I am. I'm a disability rights advocate, and I'm the team lead advocate on employment, which is one of our focuses. We have actually 4 teams. We focus on community integration, justice, and education and employment. So those are 4 areas we focus on, but we actually do a lot more than that.
Okay, and how long have you been with Disability Rights?
I'm proud to say over 15 years. Before that, I had 3 years experience with Michigan Protection and Advocacy, which is one of the sister organizations. Actually, the protection and advocacy system is set up in all 50 states and all territories, U.S. territories, and we're there to protect and uphold the rights of people with disabilities.
Okay, and may I ask, what prompted you to begin a career with disability rights?
Well, I actually kind of stumbled into disability advocacy. I had many years ago gone to college, gotten my bachelor's degree in Spanish and social work with the intention of working with displaced migrants, trying to get migrants back into the community, back into more normal lifestyle, because a lot of people didn't want to do that. It's traveling all over the country. And I had ended up in a part of southeastern Ohio that did not have a large Hispanic population. And I went to a sheltered workshop program to see if I could find employment. And they said, well, we have a case management position open. Would you like it? And I went, seriously? Yeah. And so I jumped at the chance, and that's how I got introduced to disability advocacy. I became a case manager, and I did that for about 12 years. Then I went to college in Michigan and got my master's in public administration, graduated, came out, and went to work for Michigan P&A. And that's how I got into this. I actually live, my whole life has been dealing with low vision and being legally blind. And then I was an advocate for my daughter, so it was like a natural progression for me to go to this. It's been a fun trip.
So how long have you been legally blind?
My entire life.
Your entire life?
Yes.
Okay. And so are you from Indiana?
I'm originally from the middle of Ohio. I lived in Ohio all my life until I graduated from college, lived briefly in Pennsylvania, came back to Ohio for a few years, and then ended up in Michigan for 15 years. I always joked that my ex-husband, my husband at the time, that had a really lousy sense of direction. I told him that we should live somewhere warmer, and he went to Michigan. Go figure. I don't understand. But we ended up in Michigan for 15 years, and that apparently was meant to be, because I did a lot of disability advocacy there. And then I came to Indiana. I've been here about 15 years. So I feel that Indiana is my home.
Okay, now, and with advocacy, we know how important it is to advocate. And tell me a little bit more about what you do.
Okay. I work on a team with an attorney. There's an attorney and myself and another advocate. And basically, we do individual cases and some systemic work. The individual cases, I can give a couple of examples. We do a lot of work with vocational rehabilitation services. And sometimes there's miscommunications between the counselor and the client. And what my job is, I pulled this little magic wand out of my drawer, and I wave it around, and I get the counselor and the client talking again. That's essentially what I do, is try to get people back on the same page. So I do a lot of mediation kinds of things. I don't call it that. If we are not successful in informal advocacy, which is what I do, then we can use the more, shall we say, a little more aggressive style of using legal advocacy. But we try to do things at least, confrontative step, which is, in other words, if I can deal with just the counselor and the client and resolve things that way, that's what I do.
Now, tell me, you've had a lot of experience, and you've had a lot of experience, looks like in 3 states, now dealing with vocational rehabilitation. and clients. So I'd like to know what the order of selection, how has that been? How has you seen that change over the years and with the differences in the 3 states that you resided in?
Well, to be honest, Ohio and Michigan were not under order of selection when I lived there. I don't know if they are now. I don't believe Michigan is. One of the things that I noticed that was a huge difference is both of those states, Ohio and Michigan, have their own separate services for the blind and visually impaired. Personally, I think from my own experience in dealing with services from those agencies, that I feel that the blind folks here in this state are being a little shorted in terms of services because there's not the separate services here. I think that people are getting services, but right now with order of selection, you have to have at least 3 functional limitations. There's 7 areas of functional that they consider in dealing with functional limitations, and you have to have 3 of those areas. You have to require multiple VR services over an extended period of time, at least 6 months. The areas of functional limitations. Let me see if I can pull this out of my brain because, you know, when you get over 60, sometimes those things get a little dicey. Sorry. In terms of functional limitations, there's mobility, there's communication, self-direction, employment. Basically, it's how you function, employment skills, employment tolerance, self-direction, I said it was 1, and there's a couple others that I can't quite put my finger on. But essentially, you look at how the person is functioning, and there have to be deficits or limitations in 3 of these 7 areas in order to be considered priority 1 under the current system of order selection here in Indiana. We've had a few cases. We're surprised that we haven't had more people contact us and let us know that they're having problems with the order of selection situation because we're there to help with that.
Well, that is good to know that you're there to assist
Yes.
with order of selection and with the disability rights. And we're going to take a short pause and come back with some more discussion centered around the disability rights and Employment First in Indiana with Ms. Bowman. So we'll be right back.
As I travel the nation, I read NFB Newsline.
I live in Valparaiso, Indiana, and I listen to my local news on NFB Newsline.
As a student, I enjoy reading current events on NFB Newsline.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today.
I'm Danny Wayne Beamer, Program Manager of the Elder Blind Program at the Will Center in Terre Haute, Indiana. I introduce the NFB Newsline to seniors in 13 southwestern counties in Indiana. I also utilize the NFB Newsline for my radio station public affairs shows. The NFB Newsline. Experience it today.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
Well, welcome back with our guest today, Ms. Bonnie Bomer from Disability Rights. And Bonnie, we were talking before our break about the order of selection, then the process, and how it affects those with coping with blindness. And tell us a little bit more about that.
Under the order of selection, because of the way the federal law is written, and I am not an attorney, I'm going to say that right off the top here. This is not legal advice. I have to say that. But as far as order of selection goes, they're looking at, like I said, 3 areas of functional limitation. Now, if your visual impairment is causing you problems in, say, communication and mobility, communication because you can't really use a computer, mobility because you need to have training to get around, and you're not sure if you have a third area of functional limitation, that might be something that Indiana Disability Rights, through its client assistance program, that's something that we might be able to help you determine or help you get the data, the information you need. Sometimes the problem is that there's not medical documentation to explain the person's limitations to VR. So VR will make the decision on just what they have. And they might need more information. We can help you figure that out.
Now, to be eligible for vocational rehabilitation services, you must have several goals, right? Like employment, and then college, or attending universities.
The way it works is that you're determined eligible based on your disability. They first are supposed to look at your disability and how it involves or how it impacts your ability to work. They're not supposed to look at your employment goal right off the bat. They're supposed to help you develop that after you're determined eligible. You've passed through the order of selection. You got to jump through these hoops. After you are determined eligible, then you and your counselor sit down and you figure out what employment path you want to take. If you're not sure what it is you want to do, then the counselor can refer you to what's called discovery, so that you can learn about jobs. You can do some job shadowing. Maybe you can go to an employer or to a particular place that you want to work. Say you want to be, you want to learn how to make pizza crust. That's your thing. You want to learn how to cook. You can go job shadow. You can go to places and learn about what's involved in this particular career. Then the next step would be sitting down and mapping out how to get you to that goal. If your goal requires college, you want to be a licensed social worker or a psychologist, then your goal or your path would include college and educational training. It could be even vocational training. Like I had a client that wanted to be a jewelry maker. So it just varies depending on the person.
Okay, then for an individual who's, I want to say, just blind, and does not seem to have other conditions, that person would probably not be eligible for services through order selection. Is that what you're saying?
They would not be prioritized. They might be eligible for VR services, but they would be basically put on a wait list. That's where sometimes we can assist by looking at the individual's current situation, and maybe there's a third area that they don't know about, like self-direction, maybe managing finances. How do you interact with people? Are you having problems interacting with people because you're missing those visual cues, or you're missing nonverbal cues, or you're missing things that are happening around you? Some of that might be just a matter of going through some training. Like we have BOSMA here, and we have the NFB centers out of state. And by the way, we have successfully advocated for a few people to go to the NFB centers when the BOSMA services didn't meet their needs.
And, that's important that you mentioned the National Federation of the Blind Centers. There's 3 of them around the country.
Correct.
And for information of our listeners and viewers, we have a center in Minnesota, one in Colorado, and one in Louisiana. Yep. And these centers have very extensive programs. I think sometimes that far exceeds those that we have here in the state. To prepare people for a blind world more in a holistic manner.
Yep, I agree.
So that's just as a FYI to our listeners and viewers with the National Federation of the Blind. And to learn more about those centers, you can go to nfb.org. And that way you can learn more about these, the centers and more about the National Federation of the Blind. Thank you for that. Now, also, we have seniors that are losing their sight. Oftentimes, they may be losing their sight through diabetes, macular degeneration, certain forms of cancer. What else do some of them, Florence?
Well, we have diabetes, glaucoma.
Glaucoma is one of the top ones.
And
so you're a senior, okay? Let's kind of pinpoint this a little bit, play this out a little bit. We're all seniors, you're a newly blind person. You've been legally determined to be legally blind. Now, you want to find out what services are out there and available for you. So I don't know to call disability rights. And I know to call vocational rehabilitation services. Now, once I make that initial call to vocational rehabilitation services, do you know from your work with your consumers, how much time does it take from the initial call to get set up with an agent?
It should be 30 days. It should be 30 days from the call to the intake. There is also, they could also refer for the elderly blind program. I believe those are set up through the Centers for Independent Living here in Indiana, which would be like in Indianapolis would be accessibility. But there is funding through the Federal Rehab Act for elderly or senior blind folks. And for example, they can teach homemaking, ways to do homemaking that are a little different than the way you did it when you were sighted. They can teach mobility, how to get around from point A to point B. They can teach you how to handle your money, how to budget, how to set up your wardrobe so you're not wearing purple and pink together, or you're not wearing green and navy blue or something really outrageous, red and purple, I don't know. But one of the things that I did when I was losing vision, and this was again in Michigan, is that I went to a rehab center in downtown Detroit, and in Kalamazoo, they have one too. And I went to those programs and learned things like how to use a computer. I think the funniest thing I ever had experience was I was using a computer one time and I thought I broke it because it started talking real fast. It had JAWS on it. And I didn't realize that my dog had put her head on the foot pedal and it was going, blah, 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 and I was going, what is going on? And it was because my dog was operating the computer instead of me.
For people that don't know about JAWS, it's a screen reading program.
Absolutely,
that actually reads text to us. And I tell you, you can set the speed rate to as slow as you want it to be, or just as fast as you want it to be.
Yeah.
And it's a very good tool to have. The technology has come about, and it has its place.
Oh, and it has broadened the horizons for people with low vision and for blind people in terms of employment, in terms of getting out there and working and being able to access the same information as their coworkers. So it's been, to me, a marvelous advantage to be able to have access to large print and JAWS and other types of technology.
And this is all about training, and training leads to jobs.
You're right.
We'll be right back to conclude our show, and we'll talk a little bit more with Miss Bonnie Foreman.
The National Federation of the Blind knows that blindness is not the characteristic that defines you or your future. Every day we raise the expectations of blind people because low expectations create obstacles between blind people and our dreams. You can live the life you want. Blindness is not what holds you back.
I just graduated college as a blind student. How can I independently find job listings?
Thanks to the National Federation of the Blind, visually impaired Hoosiers can hear newspapers, circulars, and magazines from across the globe.
It is a fantastic service.
Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
We are the nation's blind, and we read NFB Newsline.
I am a blind vendor, and one of the things that I truly miss is reading Vending Times magazine.
Hoosiers can hear Indiana magazines, circulars, national magazines, and information from across the globe. Learn more by calling 855-963-6476 or visit nfbnewsline-in.org.
It is a fantastic service.
Subscribe free to NFB Newsline today.
Well, welcome back to the conclusion of today's National Federation of the Blind Newsline show with our guest, Ms. Bonnie Bomer from Disability Rights. And Bonnie, how will our viewers contact you or your office?
They can contact us by calling 1-800-622-4845. That's our toll-free number. They can also contact us and even apply for or request services through our website, and that would be indianadisabilityrights.org. And we're part of the state government, so we'd be accessible by even going to the state website.
All right, well, thank you for that. And we will have Ms. Bonnie on our next week's show, so stay tuned for next week's National Federation of the Blind Newsline Indiana show.
And we want to let you know that we, as a National Federation of the Blind, notice blindness is not the definition that really defines us. We want blind citizens and those who are coping with disabilities to understand that you can overcome your disabilities. And there's agencies such as Disability Rights that are out here, the National Federation of the Blind, and numerous of other agencies that you can look up on our NFB Newsline state information channel and find out a plethora of resources. So join us again next week with Ms. Bonnie Bomer as we continue to talk about disability rights and employment issues. Take good care, and God bless.
The National Federation of the Blind, Newsline, Indiana. For more information, go to nfb-in.org or call 855-963-6476. That's 855-963-6476. The National Federation of the Blind encourages you to live the life you want.